Good afternoon, everyone. This is Andy Caruza with NachoNacho, a place where you can manage, discover, and save on SaaS. Today, we have the co-founder, Roland Polzin. Am I saying that correctly?
Well, you pronounce it Polzin, but everyone says Polzin, so it's fine.
I'm notorious for butchering names, so Polzin. I'll get it correct from now on. So we got Roland Polzin here from Wing Assistant. It's a great company for outsourcing personal assistants from across the world. And he's here to give us, a quick elevator pitch on what his company does. And then we love to pick his brain about the world of outsourcing and how it's an opportunity for many companies these days to think globally and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want me to give a quick elevator pitch, what I give you is that we provide typically small and medium-sized businesses, so startups, but also executives and teams of organizations. We provide them with remote talent, right? So if they want to outsource or delegate any tasks, typically recurring tasks, where they would typically need either part-time or full-time team member, then Wing Assistant would be exactly the right decision because we can supply them with high-quality talent that's affordable at the same time to outsource things like social media management or general data entry tasks, etc.
Great. Pretty good elevator pitch. I've actually had to give an elevator pitch in an elevator before, and I had maybe 2-3 floors to do it, and I was able to rattle that off. But definitely, I've been in that situation where you're like, okay, do I have 10 seconds or 30 seconds to really get the point across? So I think
depends on the building, right? How far up the elevator is going to go.
Yep. Yeah, I live in New York City now, so some of them are pretty tall. So some people don't want to talk that much, so they might get out a couple floors early.
Yep.
So I got another great question for you. So why shouldn't companies be afraid of outsourcing today?
Why would they be? So yeah, I mean, look, I know it's a big bit of a stigma when it comes to outsourcing. Some people feel like it's stealing jobs from like their home country, or it has a big stigma around quality, about accents, and like all these things that people are afraid of. But most of these concerns aren't really valid when you are partnering with the right company. Right. Obviously, we are the right company. But to be honest, there's quite a few companies out there that do a really good job, right? And so it really depends on what type of work you want to outsource. And why would you be afraid, right? If you have stuff that needs to be done and you can do it remotely, then outsourcing is the best way to go because you can find high quality talent at an affordable price that is highly motivated, right? So you basically are expanding the pool of labor you're tapping into, and that only has advantages.
Yeah. And I guess what are some things that you look out for when trying to outsource and find the right person for your company? What are some key indicators that this might be the right personnel that you would want to bring onto your team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, it always depends on the use case and on the type of work or task that you want to delegate and outsource. And it really doesn't matter whether you outsource it to someone that is in the Philippines or in Latin America or in India, or that's living in the same city and just dialing in for remote work. It all comes down to the job description, right? You have a certain job that needs to be done, and it doesn't really matter who does it. It just matters like how well you have thought about what that job is and how well you are able to delegate this.
Yep. So a lot of it really comes back to what you're saying is how you structure the relationship with the person. If you have a clear idea for the type of employee or assistant that you're looking to hire for your team, that only helps you narrow down and pick the actual right person, and then more importantly, guide them to be an effective employee for you, rather than just leaving them off to their own devices.
Absolutely. And especially with remote work, right? So when we're talking about outsourcing, it's like, at least in my book, it's always remote, right? And that's kind of like the key to it. if you need someone to be in the office for you, if it needs to be a receptionist that physically needs to sit there, you can't really outsource it unless you're having a robot sit there. So yeah, but if you're thinking, okay, well, that could be done by someone who's sitting somewhere else, then you can do it. And then really, when you think about how you can make this successful, it comes back to how to lead a remote team effectively. And there's a couple things that you can do to encourage conversations and to improve communication. That's I guess a little bit of a different topic, but it's no rocket science. All the content is out there, and as soon as you get used to that over a couple of weeks, most people are after COVID anyways. It's really no big deal.
Yeah, actually, you brought up a good point there. I would love to. We talked earlier about how we had a bunch of questions. We might dive in a little bit deeper into some of them. So you mentioned, maybe some tips for people for how they could better structure those relationships. Would you like to elaborate on some of those?
Yeah. So obviously, at the baseline, it depends on your personality and on the personality of your team, and obviously the company culture. However, there's a couple of things that I always like to put forward to make sure that you're at least on a path to success. One of them is that you delegate with SMART goals. So be specific, delegate something that's measurable, give attainable goals, realistic goals, and then have a timeline, right? Give a deadline so that actually the other person that you're delegating your task to knows exactly what to do and when to complete it by. And then another thing, it's kind of you could call it a work-life hack. What I have my entire teams do is daily stand-ups. In the beginning of the day, make a small post. We're using Discord, which is sort of it's basically like Slack, like a chat system, but it applies to any other communication system. Can even be done like over the phone if you want. To give a stand up in the sense of they're telling you, okay, these are the 5, 6, 7 bullet points, projects, tasks they're working on this day. I always have them put a link to the respective ClickUp task, because it's our task management system. And then, they know what they have to do. I know what they're working on, so I can make sure as a manager, as a leader, that no one is walking in the wrong direction and everyone's on the same page. And then at the end of the day, they post which tasks they completed, which tasks are still ongoing, whether there was anything unplanned that has happened, and whether they experienced any obstacles. So, right, even if I'm not able to check in with every single one of them during a day, because I might be busy, I might be on a webinar with NachoNacho, I'm still aware of my entire team, of what they're doing. And if there is ever a need to communicate, I just hop on a call ad hoc, and that's totally possible at any time.
Great. Yeah, I love ClickUp for a task management tool as well. I've used it a lot before in the past. How do you structure the daily stand-ups? Do you try to keep them organized around like 30 minutes or?
Well, actually, like my stand-ups, like what I was just referring to, is completely like it's written out. It's digital, right? So for me or for my team, it's really just a message in the beginning of the day, in the chat system, and at the end of the day. We do have a weekly team meeting where we do the same thing, but on a weekly basis, where everyone gives updates as to what have they achieved during the week. Do they have any questions? Do they have any requests? So that everyone is on the same page on a more high level, if you will.
Great. Yeah, so you mentioned a lot of, obviously you know the space very well and you're a pro at it, but and you mentioned a lot of great ideas for how people could better manage their outsourced talent. What are some issues that maybe some companies or business managers that might not be used to managing outsourced talent? What are some issues that you've seen in the past that a lot of companies can expect to come across when hiring outsourced labor? You mentioned one up front, which is not clearly communicating the job role, not having a good task management on a daily basis, not keeping your communication in line. What other kind of issues do you see from managing outsourced talent that leads to failure?
Yeah, very good question. And you just hit on some of the big points already. Another one I would mention is, and that applies especially to sales personnel, right? If you want to have an SDR or an outbound sales caller, like those people that where you would expect a certain performance. It becomes really significant because that relies on processes and on a system on the back end in your company that this personnel can basically tap into to be successful, right? You need good leads. You need a CRM that they can utilize. They ideally need an email system where they can send out email cadences after the first touch point, etc. Right? So if that isn't set up and you get a sales caller, then you're almost certain to fail with that person, because if that person can't rely on existing processes, there isn't really a lot that we can do.
That's a great point. So you guys are a very global thinking company, and obviously outsourcing is a very important part of that entire shift towards a global economy. What other opportunities do you see? What other tips do you find for success in a global economy that companies should look out for? Pertaining to maybe how they localize their marketing campaigns, and I guess what other tips would you have there for a company that's starting to think globally, not just in terms of hiring, but everything else too?
Yeah, I mean, so like for the hiring part or outsourcing part, I would just iterate that being globally oriented enables you to really pick better talent, because your talent pool, if we just use the US as an example, if you want to hire locally and you're in California, then the wages you have to pay are just astronomical. Even if you go broader and maybe find talent in Ohio where wages are generally lower, you'll still double or more an average salary for the same talent in other countries in Latin America or the Philippines, for example. So yeah, keep that in mind, that you'll be able to really get better talent at a much more affordable rate. But in other regards, yes, if you market globally instead of just in your local area, I would encourage every executive or entrepreneur, startup founder to think very deliberately about what it is that you're selling, and if the market exists in those other countries in the same way. If there is a market in those countries, then think about, okay, how is culture different? How are laws different? How are maybe marketing channels different? Because even though it might seem that, let's say, even between the US and Canada, some things are drastically different, even though we might assume
they're much nicer.
Exactly. Yeah, they're super close, same language, share a border. Their currency is called dollar too. So, but there are significant differences, and we learned it the hard way. We started advertising, for example, on Google AdWords with just the same campaigns, and we quickly realized that we had much lower performance because the competitive landscape is much different over there. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
Great points. So tell us about your company and how it was founded. Where did you get the idea, and do you have any really interesting behind-the-scenes stories from the early founding days?
We started out being quite a different company, to be honest. So when my co-founders and I met on campus at UC Irvine, that's basically how where we developed the first iteration or the previous iteration of the current business model. Back then, we were a concierge app that would complete tasks for busy individuals, right? So Andy, you as an executive, you have not a lot of time because you're working all day, but you still have like these random things that you need done, right? Maybe dry cleaning, or maybe you forgot to get some groceries, or maybe you want to have someone just plan a date with your girlfriend for next weekend, and you need just a couple movie tickets bought and all done for you. I mean, there's no rocket science, right? You could do it yourself, but it's 10 minutes there, 20 minutes there, 15 minutes here, and it adds up quickly. So maybe an hour or two every day you would have to basically maintain your own life. And our goal was to take that off your plate and be the one-stop shop app that would do everything for you. Our business model was essentially to work with third-party apps like Instacart, Fandango, open table, and then we would leverage artificial intelligence to understand what each request was, and then automatically route it to those third-party providers. And then obviously there's always a fraction of the request that AI can't really parse, and so for that we had that human component that would supplement that. And that went great. We launched on Product Hunt in February 2020, I believe.
Oh, wow.
We're number one product of the day. But a month later, lockdown happened and nobody needed restaurant reservations anymore or anything of that sort. Yeah. And so we had to think hard and pivot. Yeah. So luckily at that point, we were going through the UC Berkeley Skydeck Accelerator, and we had some time and some capital to make some experiments, and we ultimately ended up figuring out that, okay, we could basically use this Do engine that we already built and apply it to a business context. And back then, with everyone being working remotely and being out of the office, it proved to be actually a pretty good idea, and it was pretty successful from the get-go.
That's great. I love how you guys figured out a good pivot and you turned something negative into a positive. Kudos to your success there. I had a friend actually launch a yoga studio, right? And I think it was March of 2020. Like perfect timing, right? So he had to figure out this whole business model of shifting to like doing online streaming for his company. Now he's, now everything's back and everything's normal. But for about a year there, he really had to, figure out how to make ends meet, which a lot of entrepreneurs out there have a similar story. So it's good to see come out on the good side of that.
Yeah, thanks.
So I guess failure comes with anything. I guess, have you ever had any other experiences as an entrepreneur where you failed, and what did you learn from it?
I mean, almost on a weekly basis, if I'm honest, right? You always have things that don't work out. And I mean, it's a good thing, because if you didn't fail, it would just show that you're not trying things and that you're not doing experiments. Like if you think about like that period where between like when COVID hit and when we introduced our current business model, there were a couple of failures in there. So for example, we tried first to create a concierge app for Airbnb hosts, because Airbnb bookings, even though they were going down, they were still going on, right? People were still traveling, and especially for staycations, etc., there was actually kind of a new market. And having a non-in-person concierge seemed to be a fantastic idea. So we went all in. We contacted all the Airbnb hosts in our networks, tried to kind of hack Airbnb itself and reach out to hosts on the platform. We created a marketing video. We reached out or like created posts on Reddit, on Hacker News, etc. Like really put a lot of effort in it. But then after 4 or 6 weeks, maybe 2 months after really trying hard and figuring out how we could tweak that, there was just no response. Like maybe 2 or 3 hosts said, yeah, that sounds interesting, but then they never got back to us. And that was disheartening, because we really thought this is amazing. This would work perfectly. We already have the technology built, and but the hosts were not ready. Like that customer segment didn't see the need for whatever reason. We definitely failed hard. But I guess the good thing was that we stayed persistent and just pivoted to the next thing, and that ultimately helped us.
Great. So that sounds like a great tip for other entrepreneurs as well. I've been in that situation too, where sometimes you're a little bit ahead of the curve and the market's not ready for it yet. One of those curves was influencer marketing, like well over a decade ago. Actually got laughed at in a pitch. People said nobody's going to be a shill for brands. So like, people are doing anything for money. What other tips would you give entrepreneurs that are looking to launch a SaaS product, and what should they look out for when starting a company?
Yeah. So
worldwide pandemics that just pop in.
I would say if you have a product already, you really want to make sure that that's the thing that people want. So the buzzword I want to throw in here is customer discovery. So really go out to what you think are your potential customers and do interviews. Like ask them for support, ask them for half an hour of their time. Go in with a structured interview where you have questions that you ask, demographic questions, and other questions regarding their behavior and their, I guess, pain points, very centrally, and really figure out, is your solution solving these pain points? Are you actually solving a problem for these people? And if so, is your solution that you're developing posed to do that properly? Because what I've seen from not only in our history, but also from other founders, other entrepreneurs, is that if you don't really have that alignment as to what is needed, then you'll fail sooner or later. You might even convince a couple investors, maybe get a pre-seed round or even a seed round, but if we can't make product market fit happen very soon after, then you just won't be successful. So make sure that you stay in close touch with your customers. That will be my advice.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people think raising money is is a success thing, and they'll have like a launch party and all that, but it's actually a liability. You actually have to pay these people back, or you should. But yeah, that's definitely not the meaning of success. It's really, to your point, understanding customers and what their problems are, and then you work backwards to find a solution from there, right?
Ideally.
Yeah, ideally, right? A lot of entrepreneurs sometimes, I feel like fall too in love with their idea, and they're afraid to get that critical feedback from people. And so sometimes they go out to the market and they're bringing out an idea of what they want the world to believe in, rather than inverting that equation and actually asking people what they're looking for, and then trying to figure out a better way to solve that problem.
Yeah. And I would say, like, sometimes it's fair, right? I mean, a couple things that are really different. People might be hesitant, right? And if you venture out to do that, I would say just be aware it's going to be really hard, right? If you want to change customer behavior or people's behavior in general, you got to be really good at marketing, at least. You got to be good at making people try it. And if enough people try it, and if you can really get a flywheel effect in motion, then I would say there is a possibility that you can change user behavior. And those are typically the solutions that are really, really, really big in the end, right? If you think about Airbnb, like giving other people the key to your house,
that sounds weird.
That was really crazy, like 15 years ago. And like for some people, it's still crazy, but Airbnb managed to make that happen and become $1 billion company, right? So I would say, don't be afraid if your idea is just like out of the ordinary. But again, like, make sure to talk with customers, make sure you understand what the pain points are, and what maybe hesitations are, and overcome them in one or the other way.
Yep. What kind of tips would you have? You brought up a point about changing behavior sometimes, and a lot of times if your product's truly innovative and it's a new way of doing things, customers might initially be afraid to try something new, right? So how do you go about changing their habits and encouraging them to try a new product without scaring them away?
I'd say there's two points to that, or two major points. So first of all, you gotta go for early adopters. You gotta go for people that are curious and that are just out there for the heck of it, to have fun trying new things, that are curious. Finding those people will be hard already, right? So, like, I mean, if I think back and I wanted people to try our concierge app, it was so hard. Like, my personal assumption would be, hey, if someone gave an app to me, especially if it's a friend, I'd spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes just trying it out and giving some feedback. But not everyone is like that, and not everyone is willing to give you their time. Not everyone is that curious. So finding people that are curious, finding those early adopters, that's key number one. And then key number two is really inhaling their feedback, really, really, really being deliberate about how you tweak the product and make the product itself your marketing machine. If your product manages to get people captivated, if you find ways to gamify certain things, if you find ways to really make it super convenient to how to navigate users through the experience, then you're onto something. It's super hard. Like, it sounds like a no-brainer, but it's super hard to do that, because it's like just a very complex iteration between marketing, engineering team, product team, and the users. But if you manage to do that and continue to iterate, then that's probably the biggest key to success.
Yeah, I love the crossing the chasm reference. But yeah. So a lot of times, what would you say these product early innovators would look like? I mean, for every company, it's different. People that you find, sometimes, I've seen in the past that your customers sometimes choose you, and sometimes you might think that there's a customer, and most people will think that you go to market, you have this customer in mind, but that what you might find is sometimes it completely shocks you. Like you might have a completely entirely new type of customer or these early adopters that really pick up your product and start using it.
Yeah.
And I've seen some success cases where that happened as well. And I've seen some failures where companies didn't listen to the early users and realized that they had a market there and a new opportunity. They wanted to stick too much with what they're
100%. Yeah.
Where would you look for early adopters? I guess would you look on Product Hunt was a great example. What other areas would you recommend?
Yeah, product Hunt, certain Reddit channels. You could go Hacker News from like Y Combinator, their blog or their news site. There's a couple other forums and platforms out there. Probably a ton that I don't even know about. So yeah, Google will help you find that out. And then another thing, it really depends on like your personal. Say again?
Oh, I'm like, where to find early adopters?
Yeah. And I mean, GPT-4 is probably smart enough to give a couple good answers. But other than that, like tap into your network, right? Everyone has a network, and the closer your friends, the more they're inclined to be those early adopters. So really leverage your own network, leverage the network of your co-founders, your family. Maybe you're at a university or you have contacts to a university and have like a student population who would be willing to do certain things for you, maybe for a free meal, right? That always works really well. So be creative about that would be my advice. And then, think about how to incentivize those people and make it an experience for them.
Yeah, and for a lot of these people too, you don't even have to monetarily incentivize them. A lot of people just like being a part of something cool or having it first, right? And a lot of business models like Product Hunt's kind of built on that kind of an experience. Same with like Indiegogo or Kickstarter. A lot of people try a new product they've never heard of before, risk some cold hard cash up front just to be a part of something new.
Yeah, absolutely, and those platforms are good additions.
Great. So, what are your favorite books that you're reading right now? I obviously you read Crossing the Chasm.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I really like, I often read online articles. So I would say it doesn't always have to be a book. But yeah, there's a bunch of good online articles out there. I currently read actually 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I'm not done yet, so can't give the final review. But yeah, I'm about halfway through, and it's really good. What I like about it is that it's not really like a one of those books that tell you like, hey, this is a to-do list, and if you check all of these, you're suddenly a better manager. It really goes back to, okay, what are the roots? Like, how do you have to change yourself? How do you become a principled leader? And what are the principles that you have to follow? And that turns out to be a very deep question, right? And to reflect upon yourself, to reflect upon your values and what you really want to go after, sort of a vision. That's all interrelated, even with company culture, right? So if you ultimately go into building a business and have other people collaborate with you, there will be a company culture, and that will be especially coined by the co-founders. So it's super essential that you yourself know about that. So yeah, that would be that's the book I'm currently reading, and I think is a pretty good read.
That's a great point. I love that you brought up the concept of a foundation, right? And every company starts that way with a good foundation of team culture, a good vision for where they want to go, understanding their customer, and why they serve their customers. Even a house, right, starts with a good foundation. If you don't, you're going to be paying for it later on. What's going to be worthless. So what? I guess. Tell us more about Wing Assistant. Why should people choose your platform over maybe some other ones that they might have heard of out there?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, we specialize in a couple of service tiers, including graphic design, social media management, executive assistants, sales roles, or even general virtual assistants, which would include data entry, basic research, customer communication, etc. So yeah, if you have work to delegate in those areas that we're specialized, that's a good indicator. And then secondly, we don't do hourly engagements, right? So if you want to delegate stuff where you need like someone 5 or 7, 10 hours a week, there's other options out there like Magic or Belay or Zirtual, like those typical virtual assistant companies. But if you really want to have essentially an additional team member, either part-time 20 hours a week or full-time 40 hours a week, and you don't want to hire, you don't want to go through all these loops, then we're the perfect solution, because we do all the hiring for you, all the selection for you. Optionally, you can still interview a couple of candidates if you'd like that, but we do that for you. And then what we do is we have a software suite, or like a platform where you can do task management, where you can communicate, where you can store your passwords, where you can basically do all the delegation in a one-stop shop. We even have a feature, we call it Wink, which is sort of it's a video recording software like Loom, where you can record a certain process with your screen and then explain what you need done. And then, you upload it to the platform, including all the other information that's pertinent. And then, the assistant or your assistants in the background will then be able to manage that. And on top of that, we do have a very extensive quality management system that's a mix of human and technology quality assurance, to really make sure that even if there are like any problems to begin with, we're typically already fixing them before you realize or before you have to reach out to customer service. We focus on quality, and overall, that if you put that all together, our value that we deliver is much higher than of any other competitor out there. So that would be my pitch as to why to go with Wing Assistant.
That's great. I really appreciate your time again today. I know we're running a little over. Sometimes these webinars do, because I'm a talker, and there's
I'm a talker too.
We get the list together, and it's you can go for it. But yeah, I think our audience learned a lot today. There's a lot of great insights and tidbits out of this conversation, and this is why I love Nacho Tuesday. We get to have these great conversations with other founders, and learn from your guys' experience, right? How to be successful outsourcing, talent and growing your company in 2023. So we got a big year ahead of us. Hopefully, we'll see a better economic situation going into 2023. But as everybody's out there looking to grow their companies, think about outsourcing with Wing Assistant. You can get it today in the NachoNacho store, our marketplace, for 10% cashback discount. So feel free to check it out there. And if you have any questions, feel free to send it over our way, and we'd be happy to pass those along to Roland and his talented team over there.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Andy, for having me.
Likewise. Appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
You too. Thanks.